Hello, everybody. We hope that you had a good break and that you are fresh and ready to start again. We will continue with Peter Hansen, who is a chief engineer at Wind Harvest in the United States. And Peter will talk about market challenges in the United States. Well, Peter, you're there, I suppose?
I am, yes.
Good. Please, the word is yours.
Thank you much. And I would say good morning because it is 7 a.m. here in Omaha, Nebraska, where I'm at. But for the rest of you, good afternoon. I think for most of you, some of you, good evening. I am the chief engineer at Wind Harvest. We are a small, both in the size of the wind turbines, but also in the size of the company, small company that makes vertical axis machines. They are small 50, 60, and 70 kilowatt machines with relatively small rotor diameters. They are reasonably easy to produce. They are reasonably easy to transport. They also use fairly small machinery such as cranes, mobile cranes, small foundations, so rather easy to install. And we've designed them in such a way that the owners, the buyers of our machines can easily repair them, reach them, install them, as everything sits on a platform. So that sits on the ground, you walk right up to your gearbox. Sorry, we don't have a gearbox, right up to the generator and controller. Above that is the rotor that rotates as a regular vertical axis machine, 3 blades. We've been working with the Folkecenter, and I have to say, Martin and all of you guys there, thank you for all the work you're doing. It's a really good platform for cooperation. I like these conferences that you put together. We learn something every time. And for those of you that are new here, the testing and the guidance that we received from the Folkecenter is great, has been great, and the testing available now also with the new test center, where there's better wind regime than there was down where the compound is, so to speak, has really helped. And also in guidance to what is needed from a certification standpoint for those of us that are bringing a new product into the market or bringing a product into a new market. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about the US, because I'm sure each one of you are quite familiar with your own markets. There's some challenges here now in the US. As you've noticed, oil prices have dropped into the negatives, which I don't think we've ever seen before. So gasoline, diesel, even natural gas, propane has dropped recently, but over the last 4 or 5 years even, there's been a significant drop in those prices. For the normal average, and that's a little bit hard to distinguish sometimes, who those are, but the regular customer in the United States is usually relatively rural or in small towns. They're not in the bigger cities. They're definitely not in the southeast of the United States. The wind regime is just not there. So they're predominantly in mountainous areas, California, Washington, Oregon, and then the Midwest and the Southwest. I would say that generally, as a market introduction, as it is right now, Americans have become the core customer group. Probably, I would say the desire to be environmentally friendly has subsided, and I think that has a lot to do with the political environment we're in right now. Those of us in the wind industry, we a lot of times consider ourselves environmentalists, and I think for the majority of our customer group, particularly in the Midwest and the Plains here in the United States, being an environmentalist is a little bit of a hippy-dippy thing. And we are not really taken very serious. So that's something that we have to work on a little bit here, and that is a challenge for us because that's not how we're used to selling our products in Europe and other places. Only real environmentalists, so to speak, buy small turbines today as the market sits, for the reasons of being green. They're not buying them to save money because energy prices are so low, as we've just talked about. A kilowatt hour in the United States can be bought for 6 cents a kilowatt hour, 7 cents a kilowatt hour. I'm in a larger town here in Omaha. We're only paying about 10 cents a kilowatt hour within the city. So our prime customers have typically been farmers that have wanted to lower their energy costs and also getting away from demand charges. There's a fairly high demand charge for some of those places. And that has unfortunately fallen away due to very low crop costs, crop prices. As you are probably all aware, there's a fairly significant, there are fairly significant trade tariffs for a lot of the products that are produced in the Midwestern United States. Low to no green incentives is also helping to kill off the market as we know it or knew it. Then because we are getting into wanting to install turbines closer to some of the urban areas, and maybe even outside of the areas of suburban areas, a lot of those counties are requiring that we put together a conditional use permit. And those are rather cumbersome sometimes to put together because they're not necessarily geared for small wind or for wind in general. They are more for larger infrastructure projects, and then also for large wind industry, for large wind turbines. So what's been happening is that the farmers in the high wind areas have been, rather than buying their own machine or not justifying buying their own machine, been leasing their land to multi-megawatt installations. As we know, an average site in the United States is 250 megawatts plus. And also because of our political environment here, the fiercely independents have shown itself in different ways. And there's almost like a line in the sand where if you're leaning one way, you believe in climate change, or in what I would imagine here we all take for granted is that climate change is happening, to those that say we don't believe in climate change. And how do we reach those guys as producers of wind energy? It's quite hard because we have typically been out selling our products based on lowering your carbon footprint, be more environmentally friendly, et cetera, et cetera. So what do we do? And we've talked about this a little bit before in these conferences. And in our opinion, we want to sell independence to our customers and not necessarily renewable energy. That it is renewable is an added benefit for the environment, for all of us to sell our products. And it really seems like when you go out to customers that our sales guys are out talking with almost every day, those customers react a lot better if you're trying to sell a product that covers that independence. People are a lot more wanting to be much more self-sufficient. And that is especially some of these farmers that feel now that they can't depend on the government to take care of them, or depend on the power plants to supply power when it's needed, or if society changes, as a lot of people feel that it may, there may be some destruction of our society in the United States. At least that's the belief of a lot of people, is they must be more independent, they must be more self-sufficient. So how do we as a business that are supplying small turbines or independence to these guys, how do we approach it? And in my opinion, selling a wind turbine is the first step. Then also ensuring that battery backup or a hybrid system of some sort, either storing the power as hydrogen in a battery, in other forms, storing that energy is really important. And that's why I think those of us that are in the small renewables energy market, we need to look at how we can really work together. Whereas our customers want to be self-sufficient and independent, we on the other side need to be able to supply a product that they want. And what is that? It is a small turbine, it may be some solar panels, it may be some storage, but none of us are really bringing anything to the market that is plug and play with each other. We're very good at what we're doing independently. And so I think some of the things that we should discuss within our groups and cross markets and across products is, how do we do that? How do we integrate these sort of things? How do we get controller manufacturers, programmers, power electronics guys to work together such that my wind turbine or a Berge for that matter, or a small solar installation guy can work with a battery guy or a small hydrogen systems integrator. And how do we get them integrated? How do we put a product together that we can go out and sell and do our sales work, but also ensuring that we can integrate these systems into other systems that are already there? Because I think that will spur on, we've seen that ourselves, that will spur on a market in this very challenging US market. And I do think that will spur off, spin off some products, also largely worldwide, such as island installations and places that are becoming more and more dependent on power, because we all know that we all want one of these, no matter where we are, a cell phone, and they need to be powered, and the grids that needs to support them need to be powered as well. And if we can come together and make these independent power stations that store the energy that's there and can power, then we can get more integrated as a world, and then we get more integrated, then we can share more information, we can get more educated, and then maybe then we can sell even more of our products and make this a more green world. So with that is that it was a quick thumbnail sketch of the US market challenges as we see them, and some of the initiatives with those of you who have products. We would very much like to work together with you. And if you have any questions particular to the US market, I'd be happy to answer them now. That was my 15 minutes. Thank you much.
Yeah, I had one question. What is the market share of small and medium windmill compared to large? answer one in USA.
What is, if I hear the question right, what is the market difference or the market size between the big machines and the small machines in the United States?
Yeah. Market share.
Yes, it is. It is very lopsided. You know, there are literally thousands of megawatts of large megawatt wind turbines being installed in the United States on an annual basis, and there's relatively few small wind turbines being installed in the United States, and the sale of them is becoming quite hard if you're out selling them one turbine at a time to a farmer or an independent operator. So the two markets, I think, can't hardly even be compared, in my opinion, today. Sorry to be vague on answering your question, but it's a very big difference, very, very big difference.
Yeah, but also around 5%, 10%. What is your?
It's probably more like 96%, 98% of the big ones and 2 or 3% of the small.
Yeah. Thank you. And one thing you told that in self-sufficient and destruction of society in your presentation, what that means, I didn't understood it clearly.
It means that the average customer that we are starting to see in the United States, rather than being environmentally friendly, wants to be self-sufficient and independent and be able to take care of himself or herself where they live, so that they're not dependent on the electric grid or other people in general rather than themselves. It's a very, it's sort of a very take care of my family in my area attitude or thought process. And I think that that is very different from what we're used to seeing in Europe, and it's a change in the United States too. I feel that for some of these guys that we want to be selling these turbines to, there's been a change to being fiercely independent.
Yeah. Thank you. And we have one small point. Is small and medium wind turbine manufacturer are totally self-reliant or dependent on incentive by government?
That is a good question. In the United States, we have, of course, the federal government, and then we have each individual states that have very different incentives for renewable energy. And even down sometimes to the county level, there is difference. And with 50 states in the United States having each of their independent rules and incentives, there are some green incentives available. There are some tax credits available. There's still what we call the investment tax credits available, where you can get up to a third of your investment as a accelerated write-offs for the turbine you're installing. So there are those tax write-offs, etc. if you're tax liable and if you can use those incentives in the United States. Typically, there's not a direct incentive, especially not for the small machines. Of course, also the small machines offset a higher price, meaning you have to buy that from your power plant. It's not like you are a power plant that have to sell wholesale. It's more of an offset of resale of retail price.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your answer. Thank you.
Yes, there is a question from Brooks Breen.
Yeah. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Brooke.
The accent didn't give it away. I'm also a US native, so it's cool to hear that perspective a little bit from someone involved in the market. So you mentioned that farmers are looking for these this independence, energy independence solution. You mentioned how you can try to put together a hybrid solution for them. Do you have personal experience with doing this? And if so, what are some of the roadblocks that you tend to run into?
The roadblocks are R&D. The R&D money that needs to be spent. There's not very many of us. Being in the small wind industry is not an extremely lucrative business, and it's just unfortunate that the money sometimes are not there unless you can make some sort of cooperation, like with the battery manufacturer. And I don't think it's the battery manufacturers themselves per se. It's the integrators. It's the guys that come in with the controllers and the power electronics.
Yeah.
I think we have to find a way either to incentivize them to say the market is big enough, and if we can do that together, us all that are producing these machines, and you, Bergie, ourselves, everybody out there, then I think we have an opportunity to bring a bigger market share to these people that we will be relying on, because I don't think we can do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we do have to rely on some of these people to work with us. So the roadblocks are that the market is not big enough, and therefore the incentive to spend the R&D money is not really there. But again, I think if there's several of us going to these guys and asking for the same thing, then I think obviously we have a much better opportunity to get through that roadblock.
Right.
Thank you, Peder and Brooke. Can we continue this discussion after 3 o'clock? Because